Dr. Bob Thaler, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me part of this program.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I remember watching your seminar one day at K-State on fecal samples and the meaning of life. So that was amazing. I loved it. Great topic. And we can dive into that here shortly. But before that, just if you can share your journey for those that are not familiar with you, which probably only a few people.
Right. Well, thank you. Yep. Actually, I'm a native of South Dakota, grew up in South Central South Dakota, came to SDSU, got my bachelor's degree here in 1982. And that was the beginning of the farm crisis and not very many jobs available. And luckily, Dr. 𝘠𝘕 asked me if I was interested in grad school. Got my master's here in '84 in swine nutrition. And then luckily, Jim Nelson contacted me and went and got a Ph.D. at Kansas State, which was a tremendous experience. You know, both the animal science department as well as grain science with the feed milling. And then Dr. 𝘠𝘕 retired in '88, which opened a position here back at SDSU for me. And my wife and Karen and I came back, and we've been here ever since. So it's been a great ride.
That's awesome. So what's, how does fecal sample relate to the meaning of life?
I think it's in a lot of different ways, because especially in grad school, I mean, you end up doing some stuff. It's some pretty crappy jobs, pardon the pun, but you do it because you have to do it. It's things that I've got to do to check off the box. And I think as part of things in grad school that you may not appreciate at the time, but after you leave, you realize the importance of it. So, okay, that the important thing wasn't how I learned to do fecal samples, but here's the things that I need to do a job well. And here's what I need to know to answer that question even deeper. It's not a yes or no answer. You need to do this or you don't need to do this. It's you need to do this and here's why. Because part of anything good in extension or tech service of teaching is explaining the why. So you can help those people become critical thinkers, lifelong thinkers, because as we all know, I mean, life changes, pork production changes. And just because an answer is right today doesn't mean that answer is going to be right tomorrow. And so we've got to train our students to understand the scientific method and understand that today's answer may not be the right answer tomorrow.
I love it. I mean, I remember 2005, my first internship, I was cleaning, scrapping the pens and I enjoyed it. I mean, for what it was, you know what I mean? Like you said, you're making deposits.
Right, exactly. And and the other great thing is if you're doing some of those jobs with people, your fellow grad students, then that just increases that bond of friendship. And we all know that I've been fortunate enough to be in grad school. Those are some of the closest friendships you're ever going to have.
Right. It's probably similar to folks, to some degree, to folks that went to war together. You have that bond.
It is. We kind of actually, I was talking about 5 minutes ago with a potential grad student here. I mean, it's the Band of Brothers concept. I mean, you're on Christmas morning, you're all out there taking fecal samples, not because you want to, but that's because what that trial requires. And you do form that bond. And when you look back at it later, it's certainly a great investment.
What are ways that you've found to improve yourself, but also students' critical thinking?
I think one of the things that we can do is incorporate as many case studies, as many real world examples as possible. And one of the things that we try to do here at SDSU in a lot of our classes is bring in our local producers. We've got a lot of great pork producers in South Dakota. We are 45 minutes away from Pipestone, Minnesota, and a lot of those folks are alumni, and they're going to come in and share their expertise. And so, it does two things. It helps them, to relate with those respected professionals in the industry, and those professionals share, hey, here's what happens in real life. And it goes back to that fecal collecting thing. You may think it's the dumbest thing in the world to have to learn this in animal science. Well, let me tell you, when you get out and have to make this decision that millions of dollars are resting on, you're going to be very thankful for you had this class.
Right. I love it. I love it. And as you look at your career, and I think you were very humble when you shared your, your journey. I mean, you're a distinguished alumni from K-State and many other awards over the years. Um, what what do you think, or what work or research that you are most proud of?
You know, when I take a look at that, it's a lot of different stuff. Probably, you know, it's not any individual trial. It's a difference you make in young people's life. And, you know, it's one of the benefits of getting older. You kind of kick back and think a little bit. And actually, my wife and I were talking about that the other day. You know, ever since we're born, you know, you're taught to achieve. You want to be the best in school. You want to be the best in sports. You want to be the best in music. And then you go professionally, you want to really achieve there, right? You know, and then when you become a faculty member, well, you've got to get these grants. You have to get these pubs. You have to do these things to get promoted in tenure. And it seems like I have to do all these things for me. And the thing that finally, I'm a slow learner, but that finally clicked me. I mean, you know, God didn't put me here to make me get all these awards or do these things. I mean, I'm here, we're all here to make a difference in other people's lives. You know, so it's not necessarily specific trials, but it's those people that we interact with. If we can bring a grad student on, or even an undergrad student, and change their life. You know, one of the professors that was here, Dr. Dan G, longtime livestock judging coach, internationally known and respected. And when I started in extension, it was amazing the number of people I would talk to, that how Dr. G changed their life here at SDSU. And it would be a simple thing, you know, having them in class, and you can sense when kids are struggling, you know, and Dan would reach out, have them stop in the office, and just that personal contact made all the difference in the world. So I think, you know, the biggest thing is if we can make that difference in those people's lives, and we see the same thing in extension, and you know, when you can help somebody out, that's a really good feeling.
I love it. I mean, I can easily relate to several folks that were pivotal in my career, and that makes total sense. Any insights there, as far as, maybe advice for younger faculty members, anything that you've noticed as far as something that really helped on that connection, but also created that impact to the students?
Yeah, you know, I think, it's one of those other lessons I learned the hard way. You know, we always want to have the answer, right? You know, we're the sage on the stage, and a student comes up with a problem, boom, you know, here's the answer, and okay, we're done. You know, we got to listen. You know, the question they may be asking you is not the real question. You know, it might go deeper than that. So, and instead of quit listening when they halfway got the question because we've already got that answer, let them go all the way at the question and visit about it and really try to take it deeper. But the key thing is listening, Marcio. I mean, we're in a society, we're in a world now where people really don't spend a lot of time listening to each other. You know, I mean, we know what we want to say, and we want to say it now, and you damn well better agree with it. But we need to listen to those students and hear what's important to them.
I love it. And it's kind of funny because, sometimes you turn on the TV and you have, like you said, very short, people are trying to get their point across very shortly. And that's what I really enjoy about this kind of longer form type of conversation as well, to really get, your insight and every guest's insight on that. So I love it. What else? Dr. Tyler? I mean, I guess I want to touch a little bit on nutrition. So you've done some early work there on folic acid in cells, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so can you share a little bit about that, what you found there?
Sure. You know, that was actually, we started back in, probably about 1986, 1987. And that's the other thing about grad school. You really need to work together as a team. And the reason why I say that, so Mark 𝘞𝘬𝘳𝘕 was in grad school at the same time. And actually, Mark had done a seminar on folic acid, and he was pretty excited about starting to do some of that stuff. And he was working with 𝘵𝑠𝘥𝑚. And then for whatever reason, Dr. Ellie and Dr. Nelson and Dr. Maxson were there, and Jim got the folic acid study. and so then that became my project. And Mark, instead of being upset, hey, I had this cool idea, he was a great friend and helped out. So, but anyway, so we started that because not much work done on folic acid. We looked at 0, 1.5, and I think 4.5 grams per ton, both in gestation and lactation. And as you'd expect, we did see a nice response in it, and that's where it went. And so I think it's something used in the industry, but as we talked about before, those answers change. And in my nutrition class that I talked to the students, 5 years ago or even today, if somebody asks you about creep feeding, are you going to creep feed? No, we're weaning at 19 days, we're weaning at 21. There's no need to creep feed. Well, as we look at our weaning age getting higher and higher, and there's a lot of systems going to 25 days of age, we got sows producing 35, 40 pigs per sow per year. Yeah, all of a sudden that answer is going to change. And now we need to look at doing research on maybe we need to creep feed again.
Right, and it's funny that you say that because I interviewed Dr. 𝘠𝘠𝘠𝑚𝗹𝗏 that worked with you.
Right. He's a famous jackrabbit, so.
Yeah, exactly right. And I joke, he probably has half of the creep feeding research done earlier in the day. So, and exactly to what you said, I mean, weaning age increasing and removal of antibiotics. So very interesting, right? Things change.
Yep. And you made a good point about 𝘠𝘠𝘠𝑚𝗹, because I mean, I know this is pretty not necessarily philosophical, but just basically here's all the mistakes I have made in my life. And I remember when I went to Kansas State, the swine grad office was full. The swine nutrition group was full, and I was placed in the international students office. And I was a redneck from South Dakota, and I thought this was the world's worst thing that could happen to me. And actually it was one of the world's best things for me. I got to know Dr. 𝘠𝘱𝑚𝗹𝗏𝗍 very well. He's a really good friend of mine. A couple guys, Norman Ramos from the Philippines, and actually he was really high up in San Miguel. But all of a sudden you get to meet these really great people from all over the world. And so again, I mean, especially for students, both undergraduate and graduate, if you have the opportunity to interact with some international students, take that chance. I mean, you are going to learn so much more about them as well as yourself. And when you look at some of the sacrifices those people made just to get a college education and to be here. And then what's really cool, I mean, if you look at Dr. Li, I mean, he is the godfather of swine nutrition in China. And so to be able to interact with people like that, and as well, those friends that you make in grad school, you maintain forever. And I still get to see Li at least once a year, pre-COVID. We got to do that. So, take advantage of those opportunities with international students, because you'll learn so much more. And the other thing, there's more to swine nutrition than corn and soybean meal, as most of the rest of the world knows.
Right. Is there something that, this is something sometimes I try to pull out of the gas in the show, is something that you strongly believe that many people might disagree. And I have a few of my own, right? But I want to know from you, is there something that you're like, man, I disagree with most people about this topic? Is there something about that?
That, not really off the top of my head. We talked about that a little bit before too, and you did on your excellent webinar on nutrition there. One study does not an answer make. There's got to be a series of studies, and unfortunately, as we've gotten into the mode at land grants of having to have sponsored research, we tend to get really excited if we see the positive results from one trial, and again, you need a lot of different trials showing the same thing before you can do that. So, and I think the other thing we really have to be careful about is that we get outside the nutrition silo. Okay, because again, we can find something that works wonderfully as a feed ingredient, and it's going to make us an extra $5 a pig, but you take it to the carcass standpoint, and if it messes up the carcass or the eating experience, or from the other side, I mean, you think about the early days of DDGS. I mean, how many feed mills were in love with the idea of putting DDGS in diets? And so if you do anything that screws up on the feed milling side, we may not think that initially that has anything to do with nutrition, but it has everything to do with the overall profitability of that farm. And so again, you need to look at that whole panorama of things that influence pork production and not just nutrition. And again, that's what I think was one of the best things about Kansas State University, was not just their incredible swine nutrition program, but the opportunity to spend time in the grain science department and learn more about feed milling.
Right. Yeah, it's a great program on that. And what other areas of research has your group been working on in the last few years, Dr. Dollar?
Yep, Dr. 𝘱𝘕 has done a lot of really good stuff on the south side, certainly looking at different levels of amino acid. Actually, she's doing some stuff that is validating the NRC model for sows, whether or not that's still correct. And when Dr. 𝘭𝘪𝘳𝘕 was here, he did a ton of stuff looking at alternate feed ingredients, a lot of different additives and those kinds of things. Unfortunately, he is in Denmark now at one of the universities, but the great news is we're going to be able to fill that position. So if there's any aspiring swine nutritionists who want a great job at South Dakota State University, please be looking for that. Dr. Ryan Samuel has done some stuff at our offsite 1,200 head commercial wean to finish barn. Done some water work. We've done some interesting space work there as well. One of the things that we're just wrapping up right now that was really pretty cool was our above ground burial research. Again, we started it in June of 2019. Again, if we get African swine fever, a foreign animal disease where we have to have mass euthanization, how are we going to handle those carcasses? And so working with Dr. John McMahon from Ag Engineering, we're able to do that. And so those are some of the things that have turned out really pretty well. We worked with our meat science group. We looked at feeding 0, 20, 40, or 60% DDGS from either a cold fermentation plant, hot fermentation plant. And again, not only looked at growth performance, but everything on the carcass. And we were fortunate enough, Smithfield, 40 miles down the road in Sioux Falls, was great to work with. We got loins, we got bellies. We're able to do a lot more analysis with that. So, that's some of the stuff that we're doing. And again, it's nice at a smaller university is you have to work together or you're not going to get anything done. And so we've got great colleagues on the meat science side and ag engineering over in vet science. And so it's a lot of fun to work together.
Very nice, very nice. Let's get a little philosophical here. I know you like it. I like it too. So as you looked over the last few years or several years, we had a few innovations in our industry, but do you think we are having enough innovation? And when I say that, more like radical innovation rather than just an incremental, yeah, I got a little bit, but do you think we have enough of that or not? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't think we are, and I talked to the students about actually just on Wednesday. And, so again, if I'm an 𝘱𝘕𝑚, if I'm a Zoetis, I take a look at Paline, and here's a product that 𝘱𝘕𝑚 spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars getting approved. It's safe, it's efficacious. I mean, it does all these wonderful things, but just due to consumer preference, mainly international, nobody uses it anymore. And so why would I want to dump hundreds of millions of dollars into research and development, find a product that works well that I may not be able to use? And so that's pretty disconcerting to me, and unfortunately in society, especially in the United States, science really doesn't rule anymore. It's everybody knows how to play the hot button game and use emotion instead of facts. And we know as scientists, it's really frustrating when we have really solid science saying this is safe or whatever, and people ignore it and would rather focus on the emotional part. So, from an industry standpoint, I think you're exactly right. That concerns me a lot. But the other thing that we've got to do would certainly be on the non-nutritional side, but it's in the barns, because again, we can't get enough labor in those barns. So again, you hear there's companies obviously working on automatic power washing systems. So basically, we've got to find automation ways that all the crappy jobs in hog barns that people don't want to do, how can we find another way to get that done? So we're going to, if we want to keep good people, and we do in those barns, how are we going to make their life better? And so we need a lot more technology in that area. And I don't know what it's going to take. Is it going to take another breakthrough on that side to make that work? But we're going to have to.
I love it. And I always dream about the day that we might have some Silicon Valley level engineers working in our industry, but it's a tough one to compete. Just compete with the technology industry and the finance type of industry.
It is, and especially when pork's a commodity product. So what do we? If you're going to survive, you got to be that low cost commodity product. So if I have to invest $150,000 in my barn to utilize this technology, where's that payback going to be? May or may not be in animal performance, but it's going to be keeping that good staff that you have. I mean, you look at Dr. 𝘵𝘠𝘠𝗿 at University of Nebraska, Lincoln. I mean, some of the stuff that he's doing, from the computer standpoint, being able to individually monitor every pig in a pen of 20. And well, yeah, right now it may not be practical, but all it takes is great people in Silicon Valley to make that widget better. And so some of those other things that again, we rely on people to do, they may be replaced, and again, they can focus on other jobs.
Right. You mentioned a good point there. And what's your insight on, and I struggle with this, which is we always think about precision agriculture or precision nutrition. And very often, more often than not, the pigs remind us that they're very resilient. And I just reviewed an abstract for Midwest animal science meetings. And one more time, 2 diets was just enough in the finishing phase from a performance standpoint. So what's your take there? Where's same thing when on the south side of things? I mean, University of Guelph has done a few things with 1 diet versus 115 diets, 1 per day. Same thing, same results. So what's your take there based on all your vast knowledge and experience? What do you think the pig's telling us?
It's funny you say that because, 𝘵𝑩𝘢𝘵𝘴, one of the world's greatest nutritionists in human beings, that was his famous line. I remember, watch the pig, it'll tell you exactly what it needs. And again, just because we can do something and a p-value says it's significant, is it real in the barn? Is it economically real? Because again, you need to look at that whole system. So if I have 11 different phases in my feeding program, at the end of the day, when I put everything, the extra cost at the feed mill, the extra management in the barns, all those other things, is that going to make me more or less money? And again, the pig will tell you that, and you can get by with less. I mean, I look at my master's research in 83, 84, and it was on compensatory gain. And so we did in the nursery phase, we fed lysine deficient diets, and then to see if by the time they got to market weight, did they compensate? And as you said, the answer is yes. I mean, pigs are an incredible animal. They can cover up a lot of sins, and if we just give them the basic right environment, they can do it.
I love it. And that's, I mean, what you said on the compensatory growth there, it's more often than people think, I think sometimes.
Oh, it really is. And yeah, I think that's something that we have to pay a lot of influence to. And Dr. John DeYoung, who works for Pipestone now, actually got his bachelor's degree here. And so we had him come talk to our grad students. And it was like, okay, as you go through grad school, what were some of the classes you wish you had taken more of? And it was really pretty cool because his answer was economic classes. Understanding business, making business decision. Because again, you come out with a master's or Ph.D. in swine nutrition, at most places you understand that really, really, really well. I can put together the world's best diet, but again, from a business standpoint, is it the right thing to do? And so I guess that would be, for if there's any grad students watching this or people understand that it's just not about nutrition, it's got to be economically viable for it to make sense.
Right. The biology, then implementation, ease of implementation, right? And the economics.
Exactly. I mean, it's got to be optimum performance and not maximum performance.
Right. Very cool. As we get closer to wrapping up here, Dr. Thaler, if you had the opportunity to put something on a word or a sentence in a billboard that everyone, a lot of people around the globe would see it, what would it say?
You know, what I really think is, you know, we are here to serve. We're not here to be served. You know, again, God put us here for a reason, and again, that's, you know, you and I both have traveled internationally, and unless you do that, you don't understand how blessed we are here in the United States. You know, and so we can do a lot of good for a lot of people all over the world that don't have very much. I mean, you know, there's a lot smarter people than me all over the world that never had the opportunities that I have. You know, again, you know, the family I grew up with, the opportunities to come to university, and we need to help those people out. So again, I think, you know, let's look beyond ourselves, and let's figure out ways that we can help other people all over the world. And that, again, that's one of the great things about pork production. #1 consumed meat in the world, and if we can make differences in people's lives, then the end of the story is pretty darn good.
I love it. And what you said, I mean, people always talk about the 1%, the richer 1%, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think virtually everyone or most people in the US would be on the top 1%
Yep.
wealth of the globe.
Yeah.
You know, which is crazy. So it gets very, very heated conversation very quickly, but it's everything is relative, right?
Oh, it is. You know, I still remember. So, you know, we always joke. So I met my wife here. I was finishing up my master's, and she was finishing up her bachelor's degree, and she had already committed to the Peace Corps. So from 1984 to 85, she was in a village in Kenya, Africa. You know, and it was a pretty tough situation. And I'll never forget it. When Karen came back, she said, "I will never say I need anything." She goes, "Those people know what need are. You know, anything that I think is a need is a want." You know, and that's one of the things that has really stuck with me. So again, and she said the people in the village were incredibly happy. I mean, they didn't have anything, but they didn't have anything together, and they all worked together as a community. And so that's one thing that's always stuck with me. You know, how do we give back? And you know, again, I look at Dr. Wallström, one of the greatest men out there, and he and his wife Lorraine, that was their whole life. It was giving back, and they did it a lot of different ways. But you know, hopefully Karen and I can do that, and hopefully that's what everybody feels like they should do as well.
Super powerful. Very good, Dr. Thaler. The last 3 questions we have here, I ask every guest, and one is, what's your favorite pig-related book or resource?
Actually, one that I use a lot, you know, actually is the National Swine Nutrition Guide. You know, it's, you know, it was great because it's written by, I think we had 11 or 12 different land-grant universities in it. That's a tremendous resource because it's really production-based. But what's interesting, and how time flies, right? You know, I've been here 32 years. NRC was done in 2012. National Swine Guide was done in 2010. You know, and then you look at how performance has changed, both on the sow side and the piglet size in those 10 years. So are those 2 publications still valid today? And so we've got to figure that out. But that's what I use a lot.
Right. Yeah. Did you hear anything? I haven't heard anything, I think, about next NRC. Any?
I have not, you know, and to be quite honestly, you know, you got to give Hans Stein a lot of credit for that, because nothing was really moving, and he got the ball moving on the 2012 NRC. I think if Hans hadn't pushed it, it probably, you know, wouldn't have happened for a while.
Interesting. Is that something that's more university driven, that push, or you need some approval from the government type? I don't know.
The NRCA is through like the USDA, I think, you know, and but again, our government unfortunately moves pretty slow. But I think Hans stepped up, and I don't know if he found financial support or whatever for it, but he pulled it together, and so probably we're going to need somebody to start doing it again, because again, you know, it's a multiple year process to get this done. So even if they started working on it today, it may not be to 2022 or 23 before it comes out. So we always have to make sure we've got the latest and greatest out there for people to make the right decisions.
Right. Completely agree. And just one comment on the NRC, that Excel spreadsheet model. especially the finishing side, if you adjust the parameters for like lean gain and intake, it's actually pretty darn spot on for lysine and phosphorus and most nutrients, which is amazing, robust tool.
Yep. Good. Yes.
Super cool, Dr. Tyler. How about a book or resource, not related to agriculture, but in general then?
You know, I'm a Christian, so I like to read the Bible. You know, I think there's a lot of great answers in there. I think it's good to read a lot of fact books. I mean, you know, read the history of people you really admire, you know, and you're going to learn a lot from them. I mean, I was flying somewhere, you stop at the airport and you go through there, and I found a book about Andrew Jackson, and I didn't know that much about Andrew Jackson, but when you read it, a tremendous individual, but you know, some of the quotes that his family had in there about it, you know, and when his mom sent him off at 16. But I think, you know, take a look and read biographies or autobiographies of people you admire, or I think those are some really good things to do.
I love it. I've been meaning to read the Benjamin Franklin one for a while.
Exactly. You know, Hamilton, you know, if you don't want to read the book, go to the play. But I mean, you look at the founding fathers, there were some incredibly impressive individuals there who sacrificed a lot, and we don't get that part of it, you know. And so I think those things are really good to do.
Awesome. And then lastly, what do you think sets apart successful, and I know we touched in a lot of points, but as a wrap up here, what do you think sets apart successful swine professionals from those that are not?
You know, I think what really helps you be successful is to understand that you don't know all the answers, you know, and build a team, and everybody check your ego at the door, and ask for advice. You know, luckily I've been married for 34 years. I know I don't have all the answers, even when I think I do. But you know, work, and again, I think that's how you get really successful, because what you do is you look at it from a lot of different perspectives. And again, you know, we're getting really down the road in swine nutrition that, you know, we need to pull the reproductive physiologists in as well. So it's not just, okay, you know, here's how I feed them in gestation, what's happened hormonally, and what impacts do those have. So I think, you know, bringing those teams together, just don't bring 3 nutritionists in, you know, get a nutritionist and a meat science guy and an immunologist and the reproductive physiologist and these other things. Get to know your colleagues from other countries, because again, different schools of thought, and it doesn't hurt to ask anything. But you know, if you're truly going to get the right answer, park the ego at the door and build some really good teams.
I love it. I love it. Completely agree. Now I do have a last question for you,
Okay.
which is, what's, I mean, for example, K-State has been extremely successful having a very strong and large group of swine nutritionists. What's that balance between, right, having many nutritionists, which I like, and I think, so where's that balance from, if other folks around the globe are just, you know, building their departments, what's your take there?
You know, and that was, you know, one of the other things that 𝘵𝘩𝘢𝘵 talked about. And he goes, you know, it's the infamous bell-shaped curve, right? You know, and, you know, he's left in the middle and the right. And he goes, and that's the way with swine programs, swine nutrition programs as well. You know, and if you think about it, if you look at one of the top swine nutrition programs in the US in the 80s, you know, it would have been University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I mean, Austin Lewis and 𝘨𝑚𝗵𝗹 and, you know, Mike Brum was there. I mean, Donald, and you just go down, and it was the center of swine nutrition. And, you know, for a lot of different reasons, when those positions left, I mean, Phil Miller is really the only swine nutritionist left at Lincoln, you know. And Gary told me, he said, you know, in the 70s, South Dakota State had a really good reputation with Rick and George, and that was kind of going down. And, you know, Kansas State was moving up, and they're right on top of that bell-shaped curve now. And again, and you and I both know it's all about people, you know, and if you want to have successful programs, you bring the right people on board. Yeah, you work together, and then if those people move on, then you find other ones to fill it. The advantage about a team, I think, is you can go in a lot of different directions. You know, if you're an individual faculty member, if you've got your one lab and you don't work with anybody else, or you don't have the opportunity, you just can't look at as many different things. And so I think if you're an individual lab, you can look at one question and get really deep into it, but you just don't have the resources or the time to look at a much broader span.
I love it. Awesome, Dr. Bob Taylor. Thanks so much for all your insights today.
You bet. Thank you for the opportunity.
Imagine if, with a few key concepts, you could have the potential to create a massive positive impact by bringing from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars for swine producers. Join us on this small group and go to the next level of swine nutrition on this 7-week-long elite online training in applied swine nutrition and feeding by myself and my world-class invited speakers. Additionally, you enjoy an exclusive community to exchange ideas. Go now to www.𝘕𝑒𝑠winenutritionist.com.